If you want to know how to be a Kenyan, then Wahome Mutahi has some keen observations which could be of help based on some very generalized Kenyan behaviors that apparently cause us to defy warnings, imagine that there is nothing like a natural death, and take rumors to be truer than the truth. Habari na karibu sana, naitwa Rogoro na leo nataka kuongelea How to be a Kenyan by Wahome Mutahi. So Wahome Mutahi was one of the famous Kenyan authors who passed away in 2003, and in his time he used to write at the Daily Nation. He wrote several articles about what it means to be Kenyan, about politics and just the social cultural experience in Kenya. So I thought it would be interesting to go through that, given that I am a Kenyan, and so a bit of bias there, but I thought it would be interesting to just go through it and see, especially if anything had changed, since he wrote the book. I think he wrote the book probably over 2 decades ago. So I was just curious if anything has changed between then and today. So welcome, and I hope this will be of interest to you. I'll be using this channel mainly to talk about books of African descent and the diaspora. So if that's something that you're interested in, then please subscribe, and so you can see more of this, hopefully. So from the beginning, Wahome Mutahi starts off by kind of addressing the white man, the Mzungu, the white man, and he basically does this in when talking about how the white man, based off kind of the colonial experience, as part of the colonial aftertaste, has kind of attained this standard as a kind of a moral standard, but also as being, the white man identity has become synonymous with goodness and, and quality. So in this kind of opening chapter, he talks about how when it comes to purchasing things, Kenyans often buy things that are foreign, and most often they want things that are previously owned by white people because they're believed to either be of good quality, they'll last, or just because they belong to a white man, so they have a bit of a privilege. And this is true actually. Even today you can observe it. There's so many ex-UK, ex-US shops, and people automatically have this idea that, those shops that's where the good things are, that's quality, as opposed to something that Kenyans have made, which actually is something that I think we need to change as Kenyans. But reading kind of the chapter, you wouldn't really maybe see it as a terrible thing. I feel like from the beginning, Wahome writes about, this kind of admiration for white men and their things is something that just Kenyans have in common, but doesn't really do a great job of kind of making people challenge those ideas. Like, he's not challenging, why are we so kind of hypnotized, I guess, I don't know the right word, but why are we so drawn to things that are foreign above things that are our own? Why do we look down on things that we've made over things that are secondhand from, people whose only kind of achievement is being white? But chapters such as The Truth and Nothing But the Truth are among the best in kind of identifying and challenging some of the more questionable Kenyan characteristics. So in that chapter, he basically does something quite nice that I like. He basically structures the chapter to mimic the kind of the journey or the trajectory from how something starts off as a rumor and then kind of evolves to become fact and truth. And that one was quite good because it kind of uses like indirect speech from random people. So one person says one small thing, someone comes, and it's kind of like a Chinese whisper situation. And so by the time, someone like a mile away gets the news, it's completely something extravagant and huge, and it's one of the really good chapters. That one, I feel he did a really good job of challenging how we consume news, how we consume the media. And I think one of the quotes that he has is, despite the arrival of the satellite, Kenya's bush media is still more efficient, or something like that. So basically the idea that despite journalism, despite, more kind of avenues for media and consumption, people's, assumptions, people's storytelling is still quite big. And I thought this one was quite relevant because obviously, we all know about the Githeri media and how the kind of the issues around our own media. So how, okay, maybe the lack of objectivity in the media, or how distractions often come up in the media, things that are not really newsworthy being news for whatever reasons or purpose. So I think it was one of the chapters that really showed just how powerful rumors are, and just how what a challenge this kind of false news and information is today. So I like that one. That one was one of the best chapters, and I thought that one was quite challenging. So I suppose it wouldn't be a book about Kenya if it didn't have anything about corruption. So there's one chapter, I think it's Some Tea for the Boss. And basically in this one, Mutahi explores just the normalization of corruption in Kenya. And in this sense, he talks about or compares how corruption has become, again, synonymous with something as simple and daily as taking tea, which is very sad, obviously, because, what does that say about us as a people? It's sad, I think. But he basically makes the case that, the case for missing files in Parliament has been due to missing tea, and the presence of files has also been as a result of, someone paying and giving tea, which is basically bribing. And I think one of the good things about the chapters was that it was true, but also I think every Kenyan has been in situations where, someone will narrate a situation where they've been, and maybe there was bribing involved or something, and, people don't react to it strongly. It's just like, yeah, what else could you do? That was the situation. So I think the fact that we've become so normalized to corruption, and we've become to see it as such a daily thing, is something that he writes about. Again, I don't think he does quite a great job in terms of making it feel totally shameful. I think he just addresses it and is like, this happens, and we all know it happens. And of course, I know that he would want that to change, or would have probably wanted that to change. But it, in terms of how you read it and how it comes across to you, I think it's possible for a lot of Kenyans to read it and not feel like, oh, this is something that should change, or not even so much that something that should change, but something that could change. And I think that's the difference. I think in a situation where we're normalized to several behaviors, it becomes hard to imagine that thing being taken out. So, someone might read it and be like, yeah, it's bad, we should not be corrupt, but how are we not going to be corrupt? So that's interesting. But again, I wanted it to have a kind of a hard-hitting ending, which wasn't really the case. But it's still something that if you were, from the outside reading about it, then, at least you would know when you go somewhere and someone asks for tea, then you know what that means. In terms of the writing style, I think, if I'm not wrong, some of the chapters in the books were based on articles that he'd already published. Because I think he had a column, I think, at the Daily Nation, so I think some of them were compilations of those articles. And in some cases, you could feel that, which I didn't really appreciate so much, because it felt like he wasn't quite cohesive. It didn't feel like it had an overall message or something that he was actually trying to get at. It felt like, because in some areas you'd have this long anecdotal stories that were really funny and actually really good at kind of making you feel who was Wahome, and you got a sense of his personality, but it wasn't very. And then other ones were very, short and punchy, and where I would hope that long anecdotes would kind of lead to a very, like a punchy ending. Some of them would kind of land slightly and not really have the impact that you wanted them to have, which would then kind of slow down the pace of the whole book. So I think some of the issues in the book could have been fixed with just some kind of editorial, changes here and there. But also, some of the stories and the anecdotes are good. I like some of them and what they kind of say about us. I like some of them being quite sensible in how he was reflecting about the changes that are happening in our country. So one of the chapters that I really liked was called The City of Strangers. So in The City of Strangers, it's basically just him saying about how when he goes to the countryside, his aunt or his family relatives would give him food to take to the city, where she would expect that he'll go and kind of share with the neighbors. And he kind of talks about how it's interesting that there's this divide between the urban and the kind of countryside perspectives on how people live. So the fact that in the countryside, in the more rural areas, people have a sense of socialism and a sense of sharing, whereas in the city, it's every man for himself. So it was interesting. I like such chapters because they make you meditate, in terms and reflect on how the kind of social and community values are changing in our society. And I actually think because he was so observative, he would have probably made a slot in Nairobi Noir. Peter Kimani's Nairobi Noir. I think he would have been quite insightful with his observations of Kenya and Nairobi as well. So yeah. I like his voice. Even though I feel, it wasn't always, some of the editing wasn't always fit for satire or as effective in making people kind of think twice about the behaviors that we are accustomed to. Overall, I think that definitely Wahome Mutahi has some great anecdotes, writes very keen observations on Kenyan behavior from the social, the political, and the cultural. But I also feel that sometimes maybe his love and kind of his desire to laugh and, take things slightly and make people see a positive side of things is good, but altogether it kind of makes the element of satire a little less effective, a little less powerful, meaning that you'll read the book and a Kenyan and go, okay, this is funny, we all see this, we've all experienced this, but I feel like he negates more brutal conclusions for more fainter ones, and sometimes it's like a little slap on the wrist, where personally I think going into the book I wanted him to be a little more brutal, without compromising on the humor. So maintain the humor, but still, make sure that there's an element of shame and kind of, like a demand for this needs to change. But I mean, that's maybe not what he was intending with the book. And what he did give is still something that means, every Kenyan should read the book. But definitely, I think I would have wanted something a little more aggressive, a little less laid back. And which is why I think that if you want to know about what it means to be Kenyan or reflect on kind of particular Kenyan behaviors, then this is a great book. If you're an outsider who would like to know more about Kenya, then this one, gives you insights on some of our embarrassing behaviors. But if you are someone who's trying to think about a different Kenya or a different vision for who we can be and what we can do, then I would take this more as to complement other books, So I think this would just be something to get started with, and then we find something else. And I also think that this book should be republished, like a new version, and just kind of maybe editions of, just to mark the differences and add things that Wahome Mutahi himself, maybe didn't come across. Obviously, a lot has changed in 20 years, from technology to everything, to the fashion, to even the media. So, but either way, it's still something that should be on someone's shelf. And also reading this made me think about other kind of fellow African countries and kind of our sense of nationalism. And also I became very curious about satire in general. So if you have some recommendations on satirical books that especially look at nationalism and just kind of the whole everything really, I would be interested. So feel free to comment and recommend them so other people can be able to see them too. Yes, and I think that would be all for me for this video. So I hope that if you get a chance, then do read the book and let me know what you think. And if you have other recommendations or other satirical books about kind of any national experience, then I'd be glad to read them. I think after this I read the Becoming Nigerian by Nathan John, which I thought would be interesting, and maybe that's something I can do a video on as well. Let me know if that would be something of interest to you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this was of some value to you. And if you liked it, then you're welcome for future videos. Do turn on the notifications so that you actually do get to see them. And thank you so much for watching. Kwaheri. Bye.